It is Talk Radio, just gone 10 to 5. This is an incredible story. Online abuse, of course. Now, this is nothing new, the digital stick that people get, but it can turn even more sinister when it's directed at children or younger people. Now, this is just, I love this story. The Bristol Post, okay, very respected regional newspaper, decided enough was enough when people openly made violent comments about Greta Thunberg as she was set to speak in their city, they printed the commentators' names and pictures in their weekend edition. Were they right to do this? Let's speak to activist and author Natasha Devon, just to chew over this, because you talk a lot about mental health issues and online abuse and all that goes with it, Natasha. And I saw this story and I thought, so I didn't see the pictures. So local newspaper decides it's going to print half a dozen pictures of people who've been abusing Greta. And I thought, before I looked, I'm going to see half a dozen pictures of toothless simpletons holding beer. And I clicked on it and I saw pretty much half a dozen pictures of toothless simpletons holding beer. How did I get that so right?
It's interesting, isn't it?
Am I Plato or something? What's happening here?
It's a shame because there is a certain stereotype that these people conform to, and I think we're increasingly online. We're seeing the polarization of any argument, and you only ever get access to the people who are on the fringes, and it gives however you identify, whichever camp you consider yourself to be in, it gives you a bit of a bad name, I think.
And there is something about and I really don't get this. I've got a lot of mates, and that's not the end of the sentence. I've got a lot of mates
Just showing
who, you know, some people left wing, some people right wing. We've all got a kind of a breadth of but the environment green argument, it's curious how that divides the room, and it shouldn't do, because there's a couple of sort of what you'd call right-wing accounts, and as in people who are economically right-wing, nothing more than that, who are absolutely serious about the whole climate change thing. And they get it, they understand it, and they realise even if you want to be a capitalist about it, there's loads of money to be made in it if you want to look at it that way. But they just can't bring themselves to be stupid enough to deny it. And so it shouldn't just be a left-wing, right-wing thing, but it's kind of turned into that, hasn't it? Because this group of people look like, they kind of, I don't know if I can say this really because they've sort of been identified, but they look like, so I'll be careful, but they look like a bit of a nefarious fan club, shall we say.
It's strange, isn't it, the way that this has become politicised, this issue. And what is particularly pertinent to me is that she delivers the message in a different way, but Greta Thunberg isn't saying anything that David Attenborough isn't. And yet all the bile is reserved for her, which I think there must be an element of misogyny tied up with it.
Almost without any doubt. I mean, you just look at it and you think there's that. There's a little bit of the whole kind of xenophobia thing. There's a bit of that. It's an age thing. You should be playing with My Little Pony and all the rest of it. You know, there's that going on. I mean, I think the best criticism you could make if you wanted to was, actually, I'm not going to listen to her because she's not qualified. She has a view. It might be a view that's held by qualified people, but I only listen to experts, and that's fine if you want to have that view. But what's with the abuse, though? Why does it have to go with and run concurrently with real stick? And it's not a case of somebody just saying, all right, Shorty, or, you know, Trump doing an impression of Bloomberg or whatever. It's more than that. I mean, it's pretty nasty stuff.
Do you know what?
And to somebody who already has some mental health issues as well.
Yes, she does. And I think a lot of the work that I'm doing in schools is trying to build a bridge between young people and their parents, because we live in a society where the gulf between young people and the next generation up has never been so wide, in part because of technology and just because the world has changed so fast. And it's not helped by this media rhetoric all around sort of snowflakes and children today not knowing they're born, and the older generation having more resilience and all that kind of thing. That throws fuel on the fire. And I think Greta Thunberg has become this kind of straw woman. She's become representative of, for a lot of people, that generation of young people. And so all of those feelings that they have about it, and a lot of it is, I think, is fear about how the world is changing and what the new generation represent, is being flung at this girl who, lest we forget, all she's trying to do is something good for the planet.
Yes, she's not suggesting setting your house on fire, in case you're listening, Dave, with the Union Jack tattoo. Because, I mean, this is, after all, just a girl campaigning. And at the best, you disagree with her as much as you like, that's fine. I would have just thought some people would feel uncomfortable. Would you not think, look, I'm a 50-year-old bloke, and here I am saying pretty nasty things to a 16, 17-year-old girl? That in itself is not a good look.
I will find it really interesting what the net result of this article will be, because I'm asked by young people all the time what motivates trolls, and I don't know the answer to that question. You know, if I see somebody on TV that I really passionately and violently disagree with, I might tweet my objections to their argument, but I've never been so incandescent with rage that I've found that person and said, you know, I hope your family die. Like, I just can't.
Which is pretty much a standard riposte these days to these things.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around the psychology of it. So I wonder whether being named and shamed will actually stop them from doing this in the future. And if so...
we tried to speak to the Bristol Post, and they wouldn't come on, and I think I understand the reasons why. I think because what they don't want to do is then start an avalanche of abuse against these guys, because that would not be a good look either, because we don't want those guys' families to die or have any horrible illness, the same thing that many of them are probably saying about Greta. Because that's the other thing that then happens, isn't it? You get people turn on the trollers and then end up saying the very same things that they're criticising them for. So you've got no moral high ground when you start doing that, even if you are saying it to somebody who's been absolutely horrible.
Well, it's like Michelle Obama says, isn't it? When they go low, we go high.
Yeah.
But the argument that's often used when people are spewing bile at public figures is they say, well, they've put themselves in that position and therefore they have to be able to take whatever's thrown at them. But I think...
Well, to a degree, you've got to take some stick if you're Piers Morgan, for goodness sake. But that doesn't mean to say that you deserve to have your family wiped out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm just saying that's the argument. But I think what they fail to understand is that when they go on a public Facebook page belonging to a newspaper and write something, they are similarly putting themselves in a position where they can be criticised and called out.
Well, a couple of things. Yeah, I'm a climate skeptic, for want of a better way to describe it. You know, I'm just an ordinary who's sitting on the Clapham omnibus, and I've read all I can about this subject. I've read around as best I can. I don't profess to be an expert. Lots of gaps in my knowledge, but I'm a skeptic.
Why are you a skeptic? So you've read a bit, you're a skeptic, there's a whole bunch of scientists telling you that, well, the planet's not going to end, or some say it might, but it's just looking a bit grim and we could do more. Could do better, see me, as a teacher might say.
I'll answer that point in a second. If you...
Sound like a politician, Graham. That was brilliantly done, by the way.
I stay away from Greta Thunberg because I see her as a 17-year-old school girl. You know, she's an activist. You know, good on her, but it'd be unfair to pick on her. It's just not right. So I tend to stay away from that.
Yeah, I mean, the personal stuff is not pleasant to anybody, is it? Let's be honest.
But also, I'm going to pick you up on a couple of things. I was listening to you when you were speaking to that lady before the 5 o'clock news break. And do you know, as I was driving on listening to that, what you came across, you and that lady, was you sound like a couple of Remainers during the Brexit debate.
Couple of Remainers?
Yes, you did, because you're clearly having trouble dealing with the argument from...
Well, in fairness, Charlotte didn't have any view at all. She was just merely imparting the news. So she was very neutral. So aim it at me, Graham. What did I... Was it because I took the mickey out the chlorinated chicken?
No, I was listening to the discussion about the toothless climate.
Oh, I see. The people having a pop at Greta. The toothless simpletons, as I said.
No, and it just struck me as what Remain did in the...
But how does that make you a Remainer? Because I said it's not right for a 55-year-old man to have a go at a young teenager by suggesting death on her family.
You went after the attributes of people who you disagreed with. Rather than dealing with their arguments, you went after their physical attributes.
I did. Well, I was only looking at the physical attributes of... I'm a great physiognomist. I think I've got that right.
Whatever that means.
I'd agree. I just saw it written down somewhere. But I think sometimes you can draw some conclusions by the way somebody wishes to impart their character via their social media profile. That's not just about how they look. It's it's the tattoos, it's the Union Jack, it's the bulldog, it's the beer.
Everybody of that viewpoint looked like that. That was what was put forward.
Okay, well, no, that's a difference of opinion, and that's fine. So do you think they should be allowed to troll her?
Let me answer your point about the climate change thing.
Go on.
You see, again, forgive me, there's lots of lazy language in all this.
Yeah, true.
Because people talk about carbon. It's not carbon, it's carbon dioxide. It's as odorless, clear gas. It's like calling water hydrogen. It's a daft turn of phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Also, people talk about climate change. And the climate does change. It's a statement of complete obvious. It does change.
So how would you put that argument to scientists? Because I'm with you on this. I sit there scratching my head thinking, hang on, is it something inside me tells me we're not all going to die in 12 years, and I can't qualify that, but I just have that innate sense that maybe I'm just a crazy old optimist here, but I've just got a feeling that, we've been through all manner of meteorological changes and scenarios and settings and ice ages, and it's got hotter, it's got colder. We've been through a lot of that in the past. I wonder, I'm not making any statement, what is different about this one that makes climatologists, there's a word, it's not just an invented word, it's a very serious job, what makes them realise that this one is different?
Well, if you ask them this question, these sort of people, as opposed to the Gretas of this world, you ask the scientists on Twitter, not with a tweet which is out to cause a fight. Just ask them the simple question: why do you think there is a climate emergency? You never get an answer.
Well, we've got a panel of experts here. No, sorry, we haven't. We've got Tom and James with us instead. Tom, what do you, when you hear these climate arguments, I am fascinated how it seems to divide between left and right. And it kind of shouldn't. I noticed there's a conservative climate change group that started, although they did come slightly under your radar, I noticed, over the last few days.
They certainly did. No, I think the difference is that you have this whole realm of activism on the left that sort of tries to jump on climate change as their issue, as their avenue to deliver a more state-controlled society. They think, aha, brilliant. There's this whole group of people who believe that there's this impending catastrophe, therefore we're going to need the heavy arm of government to come down. That fits with my ideology. What a perfect thing to jump upon. Whereas actually, one of the first politicians who sort of mentioned that climate change could be an issue coming up in the first place was Margaret Thatcher. This hasn't always been the sort of realm of the left. And I think
there's a clip of Thatcher, isn't there, talking
there
about
is.
this
it was at the UN in the late 80s.
In the late 80s, that was it.
And
yes.
she was the first world leader to
and in fact, I think she says within there
it.
something about most people don't get this, but I kind of
Because,
do.
of course, her background was a scientist. She's got a degree in chemistry. Yeah. That's what she studied at Oxford. And I think the difference here is...
She didn't invent the 99, though, despite
She didn't. She worked in the factory that delivered that. But the curious thing here is that we hear constantly in the media all these sort of left-wing activists saying, listen to the scientists. What we don't hear so often is the scientists. And when we read things like the IPCC report from the UN, it doesn't actually say what a lot of the left-wing activists says that it commands. So you'll see groups like Extinction Rebellion saying that we have to decarbonise by 2025 or 2030. Actually, the UN's own scientists say that the ideal time is 2050 if we don't want warming to go above 2 degrees.
That's sort of true. I mean, 2050 for the world as a whole, right? So as everybody has a share within that, and the argument is about where does your share end up? If we just take it strictly, everybody does the same thing, then it's 2050. If we say, look at Britain's historic emissions, look at its current contribution, look at the potential it has to decarbonise, because we have actually decarbonised a little bit over the last few years.
A massive amount, 25%.
Over the last few years or so, then you can see there's more potential to go a bit further on that. I mean, I do kind of agree with Tom. I think this is going to get beyond the left-right issue. This is going to turn into just like, this is how we talk about politics from here on in. That you will have a version of how do you deal with climate change, which is of the right, and you'll have a version about how you deal with it, broadly speaking, off the left.
But do you sense there's hysteria at all, James?
I mean, not really. No, I mean it's
Extinction Rebellion are kind of they've been called a sort of death cult. In terms of you've got grown men super gluing their genitals to the side of a car or something.
I don't think anyone's quite gone that far as yet, but give people time maybe. I think they're right to raise the issue. I mean, that's the incredible thing over the last year that it's gone from being something that people either it's there on the list of things they care about to being actually virtually is a doorstep issue. And when you have floods, now it's not the case, and just to be clear, it's not the case. We have climate change, therefore it produces this flood. What the science tells you is that these things will become more likely as the atmosphere becomes warmer. You get more condensation of water, you get more rain clouds forming, you get more floods, right? That's where we are. So you can see how this is becoming a real issue for people. The question now, I suppose, is less, not just actually, I should say, how do we stop it happening? Because partly that's, it's running away from us at this point, but it's also how do we adapt to it, and how do we do that in a fair way? And that, I think, is where a lot of the political arguments are going to end up.
Very quickly, Tom.
Right, and so much of this is, should we be spending hundreds of billions of pounds trying to combat our 1% share of global warming, or should we perhaps be following the lead of the Dutch and building some defences to deal with the consequences?